All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and today I want to talk to you guys about the cosmic Christ, deconstructing the New Age in the errancy of their Christologies. So today's going to be a fun one because I'm sure much of the conversation is going to pertain to things that you guys may or may not have actually believed in at one point or another. I know I myself perpetuated much of these ideas, just like we talked about astrotheology previously. So today we're going to be getting into a wide range of topics. We'll be looking at sort of different Christologies regarding Christ within the New Age. There's a few different ones. Obviously, the fixture, the one that we're going to be focusing on the most is the cosmic Christ or Christ consciousness. These are kind of two sides of the same coin. And for an academic source on this, we're going to be getting into New Age religion and Western culture, the very important and famous book by Wouter Hanegraaff, the Dutch Western esoteric scholar. So we'll be reading a few sections out of his book, talking about Jesus Christ, how he occupies a very unique and important role for the New Age. And so we'll be getting into that. Then we'll be getting into a deeper discussion of the theology, the framework, the worldview of the cosmic Christ. Obviously, the points in which we're going to be in contention with it. We'll be talking about how it obliterates personhood. Again, many of these things you've heard previously in regards to our conversation on psychedelics, which will play into today's conversation because part of the whole theology of the cosmic Christ is that you are supposed to be like the cosmic Christ, and you do that through enlightenment, and one way you can do that is through entheogens, psychedelics. So we'll be talking about entheogens, how this relates to Christ, reading, all types of stuff. So should be a very fun conversation. So in regards to, it looks like a few people are talking in the chat in regards to trying to sign up over at the website and become website members. The Stripe credit card link is not working. If you are at the website and you're trying to use the credit card information, it is not working at the moment. We are trying to figure out why it's not working. So if you could, just use PayPal or sign up as a guest. You don't even have to create a PayPal account. As of right now, we don't have the credit card option. So I keep getting emails, and I saw a few people mentioning it in the chatting. And we are trying, it's been such a nightmare. Stripe, getting the Stripe credit card option on the website has been an absolute nightmare for the last month. It'll work, and then it doesn't work. And so if you guys are absolutely insistent that you will not use PayPal, well, then you can use cryptocurrency. We can purchase a website membership through cryptocurrency. But right now, I don't have a credit card option. So you're going to have to bear with me. I apologize. Thank you very much for wanting to sign up. Specifically, shout out to Jack Gregory and Norman Ernesto. I believe you guys both mentioned that you were stuck. See, the problem is if you try to use the credit card information on the website, you're going to get a screen that pops up that says, please wait. And that's all that's going to be there. Nothing's going to happen. No longer how long you wait. No longer how long, how many times you put your information is. For some reason, Stripe is not working with my website at the moment. It has something to do with the paywall and the plugin regarding my exclusive content. So we are in contacts with the makers of the plugin, trying to figure out what is going on. We've still yet to figure it out. They're not sure what's going on. So credit card is not available. Please use PayPal if you can. So wanted to say that and give a special thanks to Jack Gregory and Norman Ernesto just for being interested. I know I've got messages in the last week about 5 other people that at least contacted me, others that hadn't talked to me, who tried to use the credit card information and it wasn't working. I greatly, greatly apologize. So please, if you can use crypto. Just contact me. And we can pay for it through crypto, or if you're willing to use PayPal as a guest, you don't even have to create an account. You can use that. So that is also an option. So thank you very much for everyone who is interested. I also have another special announcement. I actually have two today. The first one is a major surprise that just occurred about 30 minutes before the stream. And that is, I was prepared. I'm all dressed up. You know how I am. Getting ready to stream. Got my notes out. And the doorbell rings. It's the mailman, or the mail lady, technically. And she has this big package from this occult bookstore. And I'm thinking, geez, I didn't order anything. What the heck is this? It's addressed to me. And what is, lo and behold, our beloved Made by Jim Bob, he sent me the complete mystical records of Dr. John Dee. This thing is incredible. This thing is absolutely incredible. A 3-volume collection of the mystical records of John Dee. Guys, I am so excited. I messaged Jim Bob immediately telling him, thank you. I mean, what a generous gift. So major shout out to Made by Jim Bob. Thank you so much, brother. I greatly appreciate this. You guys are definitely going to be getting some streams on John Dee and the magical tradition. So you can definitely expect that. Thank you, Made by Jim Bob. Really appreciate that. And also, the other announcement that I had, this one was unexpected. I was not expecting this today. Yesterday, I think it was 2 days ago, he messaged me and said that that he had a gift for me that was in the mail. I was thinking, oh, okay. Wasn't sure what it was. Was not expecting this. So thank you so much, Jim Bob. That's really generous and nice of you. God bless you and your family. The other bit of information that I have for you guys is new merch over at the website. If you go over to davidpatrickcarey.com/shop, you're going to see a bunch of new t-shirts, guys. A lot of cool stuff over there. We got new designs. We have the Calvary Cross. We have the Lord's Prayer in Arabic. We'll have more products as they come out. But definitely go over to the shop and check out the new merch. We got the Royal Ortho Cross. We have the Nika Cross, the ICXC Nika with a sort of Jerusalem-like cross. And we also got, like I said, the Calvary Cross. Go check it out. I'm telling you guys, very cool products. And we're going to have more coming in. So if you'd like to support, become a website member. If you'd like some merch, go over to the store and check that out as well. I'll definitely be sporting some shirts here in the near future. Again, all those logos and designs just got put up. So thank you. And if you'd be interested, go check those out as well. Okay, so now let's get into today's topic. Annie Banani said, clean your news, bucko. That is one of the t-shirts designs we have, but I can't decide if I want just text. Do I want some type of image with it? I was also thinking of like the Got Milk logo, but it says Got Logos, but it's basically like Got Milk. So if you guys have ideas for t-shirts or you have anything, you designed something that you think would be reflective of the sort of brand of Church of the Eternal Logos, send it to me, and we can work something out. Maybe we can make t-shirts with your design or something like that. So feel free to reach out to me and let me know. All right, so that concludes our housekeeping. Now, let's get into today's conversation. The Cosmic Christ and the New Age. So as I said, I assume many of you guys, like myself, had gotten caught up in the New Age and concepts like cosmic Christ, Christ consciousness. What are these things? What are these? Well, these are new ways to interpret Jesus Christ that the New Age does. And interestingly, as we'll see today as we read through here, Jesus occupies actually a unique status within the New Age. He's not like the Buddha. He's not like Confucius. He's not Lao Tzu. He's actually one step ahead. So interestingly, in the New Age, Jesus just, he still occupies a place, a notch, just a little bit north of some of the other axial age figures. Why is that? Well, that is because, as we will see, Christ fits perfectly as a symbol, as a metaphor for the larger theology, the larger worldview of the New Age. And what do I mean by that? Is the New Age is wrapped into what we would call a pantheistic worldview, that God is synonymous with the universe, God is the universe. It has the idea, so there's two ideas here. One, that the cosmic consciousness, Christ consciousness, this fundamental reality, is the field in which all materiality, all structure emerges from. All the molecules, all human people, all animals, all nature, all trees, all rocks emerge from this underlying fundamental divine reality called the cosmic consciousness, cosmic Christ. And there, everything is divine. We can see now the pantheistic sentiments because creation itself is emanating from the underlying divinity, the cosmic Christ. This necessitates then that you align yourself with the cosmic Christ. The idea is that all of us are God by definition. We just have amnesia and have totally forgot this, right? This is the Alan Watts. This is much of the New Age. And so because you've forgotten that you're God, you're going to have to take away some of your baggage, some of that detritus known as your ego, that whole concept of this personal historical self. That's got to go. That's got to go by the wayside because the realization is that there's only one consciousness in the universe. Again, tying back to Christ consciousness, and that the Christ consciousness is the only consciousness. So then there's a distinction between who you are. Well, who am I? I'm a New Ager. Who am I? Well, you are the awareness behind the eye, behind the your eyelids. So you're not your thoughts, you're not the manifestations, you're not your feelings, you're not your experiences. You're parts of these things, but really who you really are is awareness itself. But then the flip side is once you figure that out, you realize that the awareness who you really are isn't really who you are either, because that's who everybody is. Everybody is that awareness behind their eyes, and that's who they ultimately are. And so the full realization of who you are as a person is really the realization that you aren't a unique person, that you are the same awareness as everybody else, which then is trying to connect with the cosmic consciousness. And that is why Jesus Christ occupies a very special role in the New Age, because it's not Buddha, it's not Confucius, it's not Lao Tzu, it's not Muhammad, it's not the various pagan deities, it's Jesus Christ in the New Age, who was just a man, but he, being God fundamentally, like all of us are, was able to tap into Christ's consciousness. And because the Christ is an idea that's separate from Jesus of Nazareth in the New Age worldview, Jesus of Nazareth, the historical person who's fundamentally God, just like you and me and everybody else, he, unlike Buddha, actually went a step further, and he totally embodied the Christ consciousness, the quantum conscious field in which all of reality emerges from. So that is why Jesus actually occupies a very unique role in the New Age. And, well, even the thumbnail that I used for today's video, you guys might find interesting. That is done by artist Alex Gray. Alex Gray, and he has his, the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors or something of this sort, where he has a lot of very interesting, what's often called visionary art. Alex Gray is a longtime psychedelic visionary artist, and it's true that you look, just like the thumbnail, you look at his artwork and it's kind of mesmerizing. It's very interesting. There's a lot to look at. The colors, the vibrancy, you can tell there's some type of underlying message that's being conveyed there that you want to grab a hold of. And when I was in the psychedelics, Alex Gray is a sort of fixture of his art, his ideas that are transpired through his art. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast many times. And so he talks quite a bit about the cosmic Christ. In fact, that's the name of the artwork that I'm trying to show you guys, because what's he doing in that artwork? The cosmic Christ. What's he doing? If you look at that artwork, you'll see that there's windows, just everywhere of all these different things in reality, in the world. Yet there's this being, right? This sort of transcendent divine being who he's calling the cosmic Christ, right? That's in the thumbnail. That is, again, that fundamental field that's uniting all these different things. So Christ is not the historical person. This is a very important distinction for today's conversation. Christ is not the same thing as Jesus Christ, okay, for the New Age. There's two things going on here. There's Jesus of Nazareth, who is a man like all of us, who is no difference from any of us, and who is fundamentally God, just like all of us are. And then there's the Christ, the cosmic principle, the cosmic Christ, the cosmic consciousness. These things are two separate. It's that Jesus of Nazareth, they claim, unified these two things, embodied that Christ principle, and therefore is the enlightened master. He is the master. He is who you and I are to become once we actually become enlightened. And so I'm sure you guys have probably heard somebody like Stephen Bancroft talk about these ideas. I think he's very eloquent when he's speaking about the New Age, or is it Bancars? I'm not sure. How do you pronounce his name? I think it's Bancars. But even he's talked a lot about these ideas. But I think in a dimension, an aspect that I think we can move a little bit further along here in this conversation is, again, we're coming from an Orthodox Christian perspective. And so for most of the Protestants, they don't know how to, so this whole illuministic framework, this whole idea that Christ, again, even in the New Age, so you have a man, Jesus of Nazareth, who actualizes that cosmic Christ principle and becomes Jesus Christ. That's in their firm. Again, these are two separate ideas. This idea of a man becoming synergized or synonymous with the divine principle in a Protestant worldview, you don't really have anywhere to put that other than that's Illuminism, therefore that is wrong. That can't be true, which again we would agree, okay, Illuminism, the idea that you're God, that is wrong. But in Orthodoxy, we have theosis. And so as you heard me say over and over and over again, whether it be the psychedelics, whether it be the New Age, whether it be Western esotericism, ritual magic, the whole idea that you are to become God, I've articulate as an inversion, a misunderstanding, a distortion of theosis, because from an Orthodox theological position, the purpose of becoming a Christian is to become like Jesus. And in doing so, by being synergized with the uncreated energies of God, you will become like God with a lowercase g. That your lower nature, through a personal relationship with God and His energies, can become more and more like God. So from an Orthodox perspective, again, whenever we encounter the magical traditions, Gnosticism, psychedelics, the New Age, we have a place to kind of put this yearning for people, right? And again, I'm not here to bash Stephen or anything. I think he does good work. He had a very popular previous YouTube channel where he's led many of the New Agers sort of back to Christianity, back to a better understanding of who Christ really is. So I think Stephen has been doing a lot of good work here, but just by not being Orthodox and say you still are Christian, you're not going to have theosis. Therefore, you're not going to have also logos spermaticos, at least that concept like you have in Orthodoxy. And so with logos spermaticos and theosis, we can then engage with the New Age. We can look at psychedelics. We can look at the history of magic, and we can see it really in a different light than most people would. Because we're saying, look, it's not that what those young people who are genuinely probably looking for the divine and trying to genuinely understand who they themselves are and discover their own identity, it's not that they're entirely wrong. it's that the New Age and so many of these worldviews are so deceptive and pernicious because it presents a little nugget of truth. The little nugget of truth, in my opinion, is that you are to become one with God. That's the whole point. That's why divine nature became human, and it was fully human and fully God at the same time, which is going to be tied to atonement theology and all this stuff, again, because we don't have an atonement theory where Christ is just a sacrifice to equivocate all the sins of humanity so God can perceive humanity back in, the good light. Yes, there's an element of that, but our theology goes much, much deeper. And so Orthodox atonement theory about Christ descending into Hades to defeat death, just kicking down the doors of Hades. The icons of Christ going to Hades has a demon dead underneath the door. I mean, technically he's already dead, but you get my imagery there. Totally smashed, compressed under the door. Christ is, for the lack of a better word, a badass. Okay, and he destroys death itself. Within the atonement theology of the precious slain lamb, you're not going to get the defeating of death. You're not going to get the same understanding that Christ is building a bridge for humanity, for human nature to become one with him, to become one with the Trinity to a degree. Of course, we can never be the Trinity. We're never God, capital G. And that's why, again, the Protestants, whenever they hear this doctrine of theosis, you can already imagine the animosity towards it. You can already imagine the fervor against it because, well, oh my gosh, this is Gnosticism, So anyway, my whole point of bringing that up is that as being Orthodox, within an Orthodox theological framework, we have a better, I think, place to situate some of these ideas that we'll see today. So, okay, I want to start then by talking about a few of the different Christologies that are prominent within the New Age. Okay, so we know that the one that we're going to be focusing on is the cosmic Christ, but are there other Christologies within the New Age? There actually are, and some of them we've touched on before. One of them is, and there's plenty of art in this. So if you guys go search, Jesus, crown chakras, Jesus Christ, chakras, cosmic Christ, chakras, cosmic Christ consciousness, all this stuff, you'll see artistic depictions of basically Jesus as a yogi, right? He's a yogi. He's sitting there in lotus posture. He's got his legs crossed. Sometimes they'll depict him with chakra centers. And the idea with the whole idea of yoga itself is the kundalini, right? The serpent, the energetic serpent goes up the base of the spine. And as it does, that energy moves up the spine. You begin to activate your different chakra systems, right? And the whole point then is to end at the top, the third eye, the pineal gland, the crown chakra, that once this explodes, and then often within Hindu art, you'll see Shiva or other people, it looks like semen, a fountain. It often was depicted as, I'm not trying to be gross or anything like that. It's that, again, this was the seed of fertility, right? This idea of enlightenment, enlightening your third eye, enlightening who you truly are. That is the whole point of yoga. And they try to reframe Christ as that. He's just the fully enlightened version. And so they'll equivocate the kundalini as the process itself moving up the spine, leading to enlightenment. That don't you see? This is almost a Gnostic framework. Is that kundalini, that serpent, that is Christ? Don't you see that the Christ is the serpent. Christ is the kundalini, and that's what allows you to become enlightened. Right? Christ is the serpent that gives you the cosmic Christ consciousness, activating the crown chakra. And so then when you encounter these people, they love to mind quote the Bible and scripture and totally decontextualize verses and try to make it their own. When I was talking about One of them is in Matthew where Christ talks about making his eye single. I talked about this in my video on the third eye. Making your eye single has to do with our understanding of the nous, what the nous is. It has nothing to do with a third eye or the pineal gland or anything like that. But these people who promote the Christology of Christ as really the fully enlightened Yogi, which is another branch of all these different Christologies, they'll say, don't you see, Christ, he's the serpent, he's the Kundalini serpent. And then you can go look at Moses and how he holds the serpent up on the cross and how it heals everybody. That, again, Christ is the serpent. They're connecting all these different things erroneously, but that's one of the Christologies, is that I call this one the mystical self-actualized Christology. I kind of came up with that, but the mystical self-actualized Christology is that, Jesus, he just became fully enlightened with himself. And as we'll read, I have a whole section here. I didn't know if I was going to get into it, depending on if you guys wanted to hear it or not, is a whole section on Jesus as an Essene. I don't know if you guys have heard the theories about the Essene Jews, right? There's the Sadducees, there's the Pharisees, and then there's the Essenes. And so within the New Age, it's very common to hear a multitude of different theories about who Jesus was, all of them really insinuating, okay, he was a human man. He's just like you and me. Let's start there. And so that's the framework. That's the beginning point for much of their framework, is that, okay, we'll say that he is a historical man. We'll negate that the claims, the morality, the message. We don't even address much of that. And that's another thing I was going to talk about in some of the opposition to this stuff, is that there is no form of repentance in the New Age. There is no objective morality. They don't even actually, when they deal with Christ, they never get into his moral claims. They never get into his claims about divinity or who he said he was. It's just quote mining the ones that serve their purposes, and always reframing him as a normal human man who must have undergone some mystical, esoteric process to fully realize who he was. And then because he was such a great person, he actually fully embodied the cosmic Christ conscious principle. And therefore, that's why he is so special. So, that's one Christology. One Christology. I call it the mystical self-actualized Christology. The other Christology that you'll often hear within the New Age, and I've mentioned this in previous streams, is the psychedelic Christology. Well, one of which we've talked about, John Marco Allegro and his famous book, The Sacred Cross and the Mushroom. The Sacred Cross and the Mushroom basically claims that Jesus was historically a mushroom, not a person, and that the mushroom is the point of the whole thing. Again, reinterpreting scripture from the point of cosmic enlightenment, because that's how they read it. Okay, so they don't look at the gospel, how those books got there, the councils. They have no understanding of theology or how does the tradition who put these together, how do they interpret? Doesn't matter. They go ahead and look at scripture from the assumption that it's about enlightenment. It's about fully actualizing the individual. And so from that standpoint, they say, look, we got John Marco Allegro's book over here that he was able to work with the Dead Sea Scrolls. He was a dead language expert in the Mediterranean. And he wrote this book that's really convoluted, very difficult to follow unless you are a linguist or a philologist in those languages. That Christ wasn't a historical person necessarily, but he was a historical mushroom tradition. And the mushroom framework, again, of course, they're going to negate so much of what Scripture says or tradition. We can already expect that, right? We can already expect they're not going to engage honestly with tradition, so we don't need to beat that dead horse. But what I really like, and we're going to get to at the end of this conversation, is that the entheogens very nicely fit with the presuppositions of the cosmic Christ framework. Pantheism, illuminism, the destruction of the real personhood in the name of ego death, the name of attaining your higher self, as we'll get into, and it's very prevalent in the New Age, is what they're trying to do is destroy their personhood, right? And which, again, it's when you look at this stuff, it's just, it kind of gives you a new perspective. And so I'm always, when I'm preparing these streams, I'm always looking for patterns. And you can't get over the pattern of the personhood destruction in so many of these worldviews. And so Satan doing it again in the New Age, right? He's got a new plan. He's got a new clothing, same message, is that within the New Age, in the search of finding out who you actually are, you do away with the uniqueness of who you actually are to align yourself with the single universal concept of Christ consciousness, right? So the whole point of the New Age in the search of self-identity is to realize that there is no real self, but there is a real self. The real self is just the cosmic self. So the cosmic self is who you really are, and therefore the historical, unique person who you think you are, that it's not real. It's an illusion. And that pattern is so powerful to me because you can see how Satan gets people to destroy the apparatus in which they connect with God, right? We connect with God on a one-to-one personal level. And so the personal level is essential. You have to be a person to then form that personal relationship with God, with our one Trinitarian personal God, the one living God. But they're so focused on destroying all those personal attributes that they want to have a new name. They want to have a new identity. It's so abstract, right? In the name of finding out who you are, you lose all specificity. There's nothing specific about you that's actually you. It's all an illusion, which is totally the flip side of what Christianity would offer us, right? Because Christ is telling us, no, you are not an illusion. You are very important. You are chosen by God to exist, to then freely choose God. Because again, that free will is made in the image. So our theology is always emphasizing that you are an autonomous person with a free will, and there is a moral reality that you need to align yourself with. So very different than the New Age. So the mushroom allows for, the entheogens allows for the activation of the higher consciousness. And we'll get into how this ties to DMT. Because again, dimethyltryptamine is present all over the planet and all types of things. You can go pick up a piece of grass and there's probably a trace amount of dimethyltryptamine. And so with that being the case, and then the documentary by Joe Rogan on DMT, the spirit molecule, you can see then, if you're a New Ager, the logical follow, oh, okay, so Christ consciousness is the field in which everything comes out of. DMT, the most powerful hallucinogen and psychedelic, is present all around the world. That must mean God, Christ, gave us dimethyltryptamine and psychedelics and mind-altering substances to move us closer back to that cosmic consciousness. That must be the key. And you can see why they would think that with the DMT and its presence everywhere. But we'll get into that later. Then you have the sort of theosophical Christology. And the theosophical Christology, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Helena Blavatsky and the whole theosophical tradition, but they have a little bit of a different understanding. And that understanding is that the Christ and Jesus are two separate entities, like we've already said, so that part's not separate. But they are, so they don't become one thing. The Christ in the theosophical understanding is a totally separate entity than Jesus of Nazareth. And that the second coming, of which the Theosophical Society claims they believe in, the second coming of Christ, is the Christ principle. Now, how that's going to come back, they don't really articulate, but it's the Christ principle that's going to be coming back at the end of history. So that's kind of the theosophical, and we'll read about this stuff from the scholastic text, so we'll get a better understanding of this. And then, so guys, please smash that like if you can. If you guys just joined, smash that like. Please share this stream with anybody you know that be interested in these ideas. Maybe you know somebody that still promotes these ideas. Throw this stream at them. See what they have. So then the last Christology, the one that we're going to be focusing on today and diving a little bit deeper into, is Christ is just a cosmic divine principle that all people at all times could access with enlightened consciousness. And so Jesus became the Christ by tapping into this cosmic divinity and then embodying it, as I said earlier. This whole worldview is panentheistic, as I try to point out in the beginning, that it emerges from the divine field, the cosmic consciousness. This is how reality emerges from, and you'll see then, whether it be the John Hagelins of the world, the Deepak Chopras, the various quantum physicists, that will begin to bring new age, pantheistic, cosmic conscious ideas along with then dang, I just lost my train of thought. Dang it. Oh, well. Okay, so we're talking about pantheism. It's a pantheistic worldview. It has a universality to it. It's much like Eastern mysticism. And the abstract framework, this is another point that I wanted to make, is that you will notice when we read about the New Age and their understanding of Christ is that it's always so abstract. It's like they are intentionally not getting close to the actual person of Christ. They won't read Scripture in its context. They won't identify Christ with who he said he was. They divorce it from traditional Orthodox theology. There is no historical framework for their interpretation. And so it's really interesting as we move through here, just keep this in mind. It's like the New Age is constantly creating abstractness, general characteristics of Christ to prevent really anybody encountering who he really is. And I think this is because, and we'll get at this later, because of the lack of a real morality within the New Age. What is there if you become part of the New Age that you can't do, right? What is forbidden? What is considered sinful? There isn't a whole lot. It basically permits a hedonistic worldview. And so because the New Age permits all that hedonism, that is a trap of Satan, right? Those are going to darken your noose. Those are chains that he's trying to grab all these different people and suck them into the New Age with. It's the permission of sin. So because of that, it makes a whole lot of sense then when they actually look at the historical Christ, there's such a distance between it, right? They don't ever engage the morality. They don't ever engage who he is. Why? Because that would shed light on potentially their own sinful behavior. That moral light of Christ may cause them to look at themselves in a different way. That is threatening. That is also salvific. And that, I think, is why they're always engaging in these large general abstractions. So, yeah. Anyways, let's get into some of this reading. So I have a whole discussion I want to get into here, but there's some really good reading that I want to give you guys. Again, this book, for those of you who aren't aware, this is a really insightful book. I don't think all of you guys would necessarily be interested in purchasing it, but it's called New Age Religion and Western Culture. This is actually the dissertation of Wouter Hanegraaff. Wouter Hanegraaff is the very famous Dutch scholar. He's actually in charge of the Rittman Library, I believe is the largest Hermetic library in the world. And so Wouter Hanegraaff is a Western esoteric scholar in the field of Western esoteric traditions. And for his dissertation, for his PhD, he actually wrote this book. And this is such an incredible book. Like if you want a complete overview of the New Age at an academic level, an academic critique, and really he's not even critiquing it. He's just trying to grab a hold of what it is, the New Age, what it claims itself to be, what are its ideas, and how are they related, what authors do they come from, what books, stuff like that. So this book is actually very insightful. Now, there's a whole section here dealing with the meta-empirical in human beings, and there's a section there on Christ. And this is what I want to share with you guys first, is reading this description of Christ. Okay, so here is Wouter Hanegraaff in his important book, The New Age Religion and Western Culture. And this is the section on Christ. Again, how Christ takes on a very special occupation within the New Age. Here it is. It is remarkable how often New Age authors talk about Christ or the Christ as a divine reality, a power or person. In spite of the religious inclusivity of New Age thinking, in spite of its interest in Oriental religions, and in spite of its criticism of mainstream Christianity, it is still Christ who dominates New Age speculation wherever the need is felt to explain the relation between God and humanity by some mediating principle. Not even the Buddha, generally regarded by New Agers as a model of spiritual enlightenment, comes even close to the unique metaphysical status enjoyed by Christ. Before discussing this New Age Christology, we must distinguish it from another view which properly belongs to a latter section. This is the tendency to say Jesus Christ exemplifies what each human being will one day become. Christ is then put forward as a model of spirituality to which we should all aspire. He exemplifies the human potential for attaining, after a long process of spiritual evolution. Again, you notice how all these ideas kind of topple onto each other. A state of perfect spiritual enlightenment. As such, Christ is often presented as a highly evolved spiritual master who has progressed to a high status in the spiritual hierarchy. The distinction between human beings and Christ is thus merely a matter of degree. Christ actually becomes a spiritual, quote, entity of the kind discussed in chapter 7, section 3b. In this section, we are interested in approaches that accord to Christ a unique divine status. We may interpret this viewpoint as a New Age variation on traditional views of Christ as mediator between God and humanity. These two approaches are not necessarily contradictory and are certainly not regarded by New Age believers. They must be distinguished, however, for reasons of analysis. And so here we go. This is the Christ, and he's putting this in quotes. So this is the cosmic Christ, this is Christ conscious, this is the New Age Christ. The Christ in New Age parlance may mean any one of these three closely connected things. One, a supreme state of mind called Christ consciousness. Two, a spiritual reality mostly referred to as the Christ principle. And three, the incarnation of this principle, again, abstract, ambiguous, non-personal, it's just a principle, in human form. So the principle became form, human form. Christ consciousness, one, is a state of total enlightenment, love, and compassion to which all human beings must aspire. Jesus developed this consciousness in himself, encouraging us to do the same. Christ consciousness means being directly aware of one's oneness with God while living in the world of manifestation. This awareness implies total unselfish love and compassion for all beings. Now, I'm going to pause right there for a second, because one of the things that I wanted to, and maybe I'll talk a little bit more about this later in the stream, is the selfishness of the New Age. And I just mentioned that there is no moral restrictions, or I mean, there are, but they're really ambiguous in the New Age, all this stuff. It's not like trying to become an Orthodox Christian and you realize, my gosh, I'm a pretty darn sinful person, and now I got to try to change my life the way that I live it, and that's not easy. It's easy to be New Age. It's not difficult. And so, ironically, it's talking about how this awareness, this Christ consciousness, implies total unselfish love and compassion for all beings. Yet, the whole New Age spiritual journey is entirely selfish. The whole point is that you need to become God. And you have to realize that you are one with the creator of the universe. In fact, you are it. You're just limited right now because you're inside a human body, but that awareness behind your eyes, that's what created the universe, and that's who you are. So, like the psychedelics, you take the psychedelics, you go into psychedelic spaces, you attain connections, dots connected, ideas, all this different stuff, then you bring it back to sober reality, and now you're talking with your friend, and they say, yeah, but you're high. I mean, it probably was just a hallucination, and now you're, oh yeah, well, you don't understand. You haven't been there. You don't understand. You're not brave enough to go into the realms that I go into. I'm more spiritually enlightened. I'm willing to go into those places. And you can see then, in the name of dissolving one's ego, it actually inflates one ego. And I would say a similar concept. So this exact same thing is happening in the New Age. In the name of being selflessness or being selfless, they're incredibly selfish. And so there is no humility. There is no real humility in the New Age because so much of the prostration is all virtue signaling. It's tons of virtue signaling, right? What exactly do they do to humble themselves, right? Are they repenting from any of their sins? Are they feeding the poor? Are they going and doing, works out into the world? What exactly are the New Agers doing that is repentful or humbling to them? Or not much. And so you see then this emphasis on oneness, oneness. It's really like Satan has created a collective altered psyche. And again, he wants everybody to get inside there and attain that same one psyche. They totally destroy their personhood. They're just automatons now. They're institutionalized, right? This is part of the NPC. It's all part of the same dissolving of the personhood, the satanic, purpose to destroy the person, destroying the image of God in man. That's what the transhumanism is. That's what the irrationality is. The point is to destroy the image of God in man. And so funny then that the New Age does that by trying to attain divine consciousness, that actually to become the Christ consciousness. So they're using Christ, they're using the real God's name to lure people into these pitfalls, into these cul-de-sacs, if you will. It's amazing. It's amazing. So just keep that in mind, for me, and we'll talk about it. I'm sure you guys already know, many of you guys probably were New Agers like myself, but the selfishness, you totally see it, right? I mean, just think of, for example, the Buddha. The Buddha's wife was pregnant when he went to go sit under the Bodhi tree. So within Buddhism, did he man up? He's got his woman pregnant. Did he man up? Did he decide, Siddhartha Gautama, I will be the prince. I'll take care of my wife and I'll raise my kids the right. No. He went and he went out and sit behind the tree, and he wanders the countryside for years, gathering a following to talk about the dissolution of the person, that the person isn't real, the an-atman, right? The absence of a soul. And so you see then the same game. It's the same game. It's moving away from real responsibility. Buddha, Siddhartha, why don't you take care of your wife and your children? No, I'm interested in enlightenment. I'm going to become one with the universe. And so what does he do? A completely selfish journey in the name of loving everything, becoming unselfish, all this different stuff, right? So I don't know. I just see a little something there, but continuing on. Sources representative of the New Age sensu strictu, strongly influenced by Alice Bailey's modern Christian theosophy and Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy, usually go one step further. They claim that by developing this supreme consciousness, we are actually aligning ourselves with an objectively existing universal pattern, energy or principle, the Christ principle or cosmic Christ. And so, again, it's like everything that we're going to read today is just a distortion of. I mean, as an Orthodox Christian, our life is to align ourselves with the Logos, which is the source of all patterns. It is the source of creation itself. I mean, like our world is imbued by the organization, by the logic, the reason, the honor, the beauty, the aesthetic of the Logos, of the truth of the Logos. And so it's funny that all these heresies then, again, because all they have to do is destroy the personhood aspect, and then they keep really other garments of Christian theology around, like, again, theosis here. And, oh no, the purpose is for you to align yourself with the objective pattern of reality. Okay, so we believe in logos. We absolutely believe in that objective pattern of reality. Except we don't believe it's just this abstract divine principle that I can do anything to align myself with. No, the Logos said he was the Logos, and he gave specific things that we needed to do. In the Ramallah books, we find descriptions such as the following, quote, "The basic principle of the Christ, the principle which illuminates unto this earth, the principle which is to redeem both humanity and this earth," which, again, we believe. Christ, the Logos, does redeem humanity and creation, right? With the baptism, the waters of the baptism, they're all over the world now. All of creation has been sanctified. Is that the sacrificial service and love? The Christ, therefore, is the spirit of service, of the sacrificing of the self. You see how they flip that? Christ is the spirit of service. Yes. Which means the sacrificing of the self. What? We have to destroy ourselves again? We have to destroy our personhood to align with the cosmic principle? Again, the opposite, right? It's like so much similar, and then they just throw in a little something which inverts the entire worldview. So that, or I'll just read it. The Christ, therefore, is the spirit of service, of the sacrificing of the self, so that through the control of the lower elements, its being, humanity, can rise to be an instrument of service. The Nazarene's life was intended to show what humanity can achieve and what humanity may do when it is christened, right? So Jesus, all he did, he just showed you what you can be if you're christened. If you're christened by the divine principle, you're christened by Christ consciousness, cosmic Christ, that's exactly what you'll be. And again, how do you do that? You have to do away with your personhood. That whole historical ego that you think you are, that you need, that's all baggage. Sorry, buddy, you're going to have to get rid of that. Do not think, however, that the Christ dwells only in a few beings of great evolution. No. The Christ expression exists in all of you. And the light which you shine, the Christ light, will vary according to your point of consciousness, your soul's knowingness. You are all Christ in the making. So that's from the Ramallah. So again, we're getting much of the New Age framework here. And so continuing on, that this Christ principle must be conceived not only as an inherent human potentiality, but as an objective spiritual reality, becomes particularly clear in the early work of David Spangler. He describes the Christ principle as an evolutionary educational force of energy present in the evolving life. I love this. You'll hear this evolution stuff over and over and over again. It's like, again, so I'm about halfway through Logos Rising by E. Michael Jones, and one of the points he makes is his take on the destruction of metaphysics and really the lack of any sort of metaphysical philosophy. We don't do a whole lot of metaphysics. It used to be in philosophy, metaphysics was the king. Everything descends from the metaphysics. Now we don't do it. And so E. Michael Jones made a comment in that book at one point that really has resonated with me, is that the intelligentsia with Darwinian Wallace evolution theory, they substituted metaphysics for biology. And so we don't do metaphysics anymore. So now the beginning point of worldviews, the beginning point of intellectual discussion about reality, about the world, is now all through a biological lens. It's not about a metaphysical objectivity. It's not about the laws of logic. It's not about much of what we try to do on this channel and other channels, obviously, in the orthosphere. No, it's about biology. And then so biology then is material. Biology then allows for the scientific technological paradigm to come into play, emphasizing evolution, evolution, evolution. And so then the New Age, again, all this in my mind is tricks of the evil one. And so that's why they all take on the same pattern. So you start looking into the New Age. Well, they're not going to be talking about Darwin and Wallace. They're instead going to use the same language, though. Everything is evolving. Everything is changing. So you're telling me that what you're telling me then isn't objectively true? No, it is. It's just my worldview doesn't make any sense. So again, you're going to hear this evolving language all the time. Everything's evolving. You're supposed to evolve, which then by definite, it totally entraps you back into the Darwinian Wallace worldview. Assisting again, because there is no metaphysics in this New Age crap. Just like the astrotheology, the explanatory power is so limited, and so they prevent you from getting outside the arena of its own explanation, right? It's like our explanatory power exists within this realm. Therefore, we're going to construct cognitive barriers to make you stay in this realm. Therefore, it perceives to all be true. And so the same thing, I think, is with this, the lack of any metaphysics in the New Age, and then the evolution language. It basically brings the New Age as the spiritual compartment, the spiritual partner to Darwinian evolutionary theory, modern evolutionary theory, all this different stuff. So, continuing on. We might regard this simply as an aspect of what is elsewhere described as the divine life force or energy. But Spangler and other representatives of the New Age sensu stricto insist that the Christ principle is something more specific. Spangler describes how the Christ principle acts as the principal spiritual counterforce to the downward pole of merely materialistic consciousness, and how throughout history many, quote, great beings have been incarnated on earth in order to assist in this great cause. Oh, okay. Interesting. So many beings have incarnated to assist in this great cause. So the cosmic Christ energy, and then this is much of their worldview, it was trying to use, the Confucius, he was part of it. The Buddha was part of it. Muhammad was part of it. Well, you can't really say any of the avatars in Hinduism because they don't really have any of a historical reality. So, but the actual age figures, stuff like that, Lao Tzu, they're all just trying to connect back to this cosmic consciousness, and they're all part of it. The Christ principle wanted them to incarnate. He wanted them to live. So their possibilities were limited. However, because they, quote, were not part of the evolutionary stream of Earth, unquote, continuing quote, it was necessary for an agent of Earth to reach a point where he could link the cosmic Christ and radiate his energies. Okay, so again, you see how it totally bypasses any philosophy. There's no meat and potatoes to this. So their possibilities were limited, however, because they were not part of the evolutionary stream of Earth. It was necessary for an agent of Earth to reach a point, so somebody had to become enlightened enough to reach a point where he could link cosmic Christ and radiate his energies. You see how similar that is even to Orthodox theology? Radiating energies, a cosmic Christ. You see, it's like the evil one is always distorting. He's constantly distorting truth. He's misleading truth. And so, yes, Jesus Christ, the Logos, had to incarnate as a human being to build that bridge so human beings who had fallen away from God's dictates and order can be re-synergized by his energies. That we could even radiate his energies. We would agree with that. But this whole worldview it's actually the opposite. And that's what's so funny is like you read this stuff, the words, they use so many of the same words, but it doesn't mean the same thing at all. So Buddha was the first to succeed. He actually contacted the Christ energy and thus became one with the cosmic Christ, which resulted in the release of positive energies on earth. Over the bridge thus built by the Buddha, the Christ could now cross over to humanity. At the beginning of the age of Pisces, he finally succeeded in reaching the earth and began to blend with the evolutionary energies of the earth. At this point, the man Jesus awoke to the Christ consciousness and, going one step further than Buddha, became fully one with the Christ principle. Thus, he became the focal point for all the progressive descent and anchoring of the Christ energy on earth. Thus began one of the greatest dramas of this planet's history, the impregnation of an aspect of the cosmic Christ through the consciousness of Jesus into the physical, etheric, and spiritual life of earth. And so it's like, again, even this idea is that Christ, in Orthodox theology, Christ sanctifies creation. Christ sanctifies creation. It's through his baptism. When he was baptized and the Holy Spirit descends, the heavens open up. The water that flows off of God and back into the Jordan, it moves all around the world. All of creation has been sanctified by the water that Christ was baptized with. We believe this theologically. That's how creation is redeemed. And we have right here then, it's like, again, a subtle little distinction, difference, totally changes the worldview, but it sounds so possible. It sounds like so plausible. The incarnation of the Christ principle, therefore, includes Jesus' unification with the Christ. You see, because the Christ principle and Jesus, two separate things. But his unification with the Christ, but refers more crucially to the earth becoming impregnated with Christ energy. This impregnation signaled a turning point in history. Over the last 2,000 years, the Christ energy has gradually proceeded to permeate the whole earth, finally resulting in a total transformation of the earth on, quote, the invisible etheric level. And so they use the etheric level as really, this is the ether is another term for the New Age Holy Spirit. That's how they think of it, basically. We may now expect a second coming of the Christ, although not necessarily in a human form, which will complete the process and bring in the New Age. In this New Age, the transformation that has already occurred on the etheric level will become manifest on the other level. So we will return to the theme of the coming New Age and the return of Christ in chapter 12, of which I have a section that we can read that. In the meantime, it should be noted that the rest of the particular theory, which is found almost exclusively in sources belonging to the New Age, is directly derived from anthroposophy. And that's another thing, just like the psychedelics, many of their outlandish theories, any of the novel speculation put forth by the New Age or often in the psychedelics, it's that they get a sort of life of themselves because the people with letters behind their names, the PhDs, the medical doctors, who are part of these communities, will then begin to back these ideas. So then to the normie people who watched in an interview and this guy, oh, he's a quantum physicist, oh, this guy has a PhD, this must be true, right? And so they hear these theories and they really think them as factual. So just as he's highlighting here, much of the sources the New Age uses talking about Christ actually comes from New Age people. And so they just source each other's work in the name of scholarship, in the name of research. Some other sources in the same tradition combine the anthroposophical Christology with more general theosophical ideas. In particular, we find the view that the grounding of the Christ principle is not a unique turning point in history, as believed by anthroposophists, but a regular event repeated at the beginning of every new age of the world. Throughout history, great, quote, masters, Moses, Buddha, Pythagoras, Zoroaster, etc., have come to earth for this purpose, and each of them has given a new impulse to the spiritual evolution of humanity. Jesus, in this view, was just one master among many, but all of them shared the Christ energy. So even though Jesus is one master among many, they also believe he's the only one that fully embodies the Christ principle. Such differences notwithstanding, all New Age authors who speak about the Christ at all tend to describe it as the energy of unselfish love and compassion rather than a divine person in the traditional sense. And this is such, again, this guy's not even a Christian. Wouter Hanegraaff, the Western esoteric scholar who wrote this book, he's not even a Christian, but he nails it. That's the big one, is they never address the personhood of Christ. They'll address the personhood of this man called Jesus of Nazareth, but divinity itself can never be a person. That's the big one. Divinity itself can never be a person, and that's what they're always getting people to move back towards, is these essentialistic frameworks of God as a divine principle. It's a divine concept. It's a consciousness. It's a field that everything emanates from. It's like, well, can I pray to any of those things? Can I repent to any of? No, because it's not a person. And that's so he highlights that their Christ is all about energy, unselfish love, and compassion. Which in my mind, then sure, he's about energy, abstract understanding. Unselfish love is really selfishness. And then compassion is really tolerance. So let me just retranslate the New Age for you. That's really what it means. Nevertheless, statements about the Christ are characterized by the same ambiguity over the issue of personality, which we already found in our discussion about God. He is neither personal nor impersonal, but both at the same time. However, while in the case of God, the impersonal pole tends to dominate, in the case of the Christ, it is the personal element which is inevitably emphasized. The very name of Christ, by virtue of its traditional connotations, already has this effect. It seems plausible that, under any other name, New Age speculations about this principle would hardly have had much impact. The difference between the energies of God and Christ is, after all, quite subtle from a purely theoretical point of view. It is the suggestion of personal love and compassion, of an intimacy and warmth that cannot be so obviously expected from, quote, the source that creates supernovas, unquote, which really puts the Christ into a separate category. As such, he seems to function quite traditionally, in a sense, as a mediating reality between universal source and human beings. While God is the ultimate power and energy animating and sustaining the universe, the Christ is the aspect of God which is, quote, personally involved with the fate of humanity. So that, again, our God, even though he is highlighting that, there is a sort of more of a personal relationship to their generic Christ, we would never say that it's Christ who is the person. It's Jesus Christ, the second Son. He's the person of the God. They're all persons. It's one essence, three persons. So the idea that Christ is the aspect of God which is personally involved in the fate of humanity, wrong, incorrect. It's all three. It's three persons, one essence. That's who God is. So Christ is not the only personally involved in the fate of humanity. All three of them are. It is interesting to see how David Spangler, whose book Revelation is a foundational text of the New Age movement, later came to revise and redefine his theosophical and anthroposophical ideas about the Christ in order to assimilate them to his new holographically inspired worldview. All right, now I have this written down as another thing I want to talk to you guys about. In reimagination of the world, he acknowledges that he finally found the topology of theosophy too limiting. His attempts to redefine, quote, the Christ in holographic terms are a particular good illustration of the ongoing New Age dilemma between the personal and the non-personal. Spangler makes clear that whatever he says about God, the Buddha, or the Christ is based on direct personal experiences of presences. And okay, I got to say something before I even get into that. So I want to read his block quote here on direct personal experience on presences, but I wanted to name one thing, and that is this holographic. He talks about how, so this is a different author, David Spangler, but somebody like a Michael Talbot in his famous book, The Holographic Universe. The holographic universe and holographic theory is really another name for a simulation theory, because it's just saying that all of reality is really a hologram. Now, in the New Age context, again, because remember their starting point, their presupposition is that the cosmic consciousness, the cosmic Christ consciousness, this is the fundamental field in which all reality emerges from. Therefore, that is the only thing that's objectively true. And therefore, because the field, the consciousness, the cosmic Christ that everything comes from is the only thing that's objectively true, the physical reality is a hologram. It's holographic. It's a simulation. It's an illusion. So you get the Hindu concept of Maya, the technological concept of a simulation, or the quantum mechanic and the New Age idea of a hologram. It's the same framework. They use different language. They dress it up in different ways, but it takes you intellectually, ideologically to the same endpoint. And therefore, how can you make it? So this is what I would love to ask these holographic people is, so your book is based on everything that's a hologram. How much of it can I actually believe to be true? Right? Again, just as we highlight with Made by Jim Bob, we did a whole stream talking about simulation and its ridiculousness. That if everything is a simulation, how do you know that your interpretation of the simulation isn't a simulation? How do you know that what you believe to be a simulation is ultimately true? How do you know anything is ultimately true if everything is a simulation, if everything is a hologram, if everything is an illusion? You can't. You can't. And that's what I mean is like the sophistication of this stuff is where is it? Like how you can't say everything's a hologram, then tell me what everything that you're saying is a hologram is objectively true. It doesn't even make sense. So I just wanted to highlight that the quantum mechanic, because they talk about the double slit experiment. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the double slit experiment, where they take an electron, they shoot an electron, they basically have an electron gun. They shoot an electron through a slit. They saw that it was the particle was presenting itself as a wave, right? When nobody was there to witness the particles go through this double split, it appeared that the particles actually occupied a state of a wave, a state of potentiality. But when they tried to put a camera in there to document the particle potentiality, the particle maintained a particle and never went into its wave state. And therefore, quantum mechanics, this is a big, big deal. This is the whole basis on non-locality. So you look into the Essene Institute and quantum physicists and various scholars getting into non-local forms of consciousness, remote viewing, this type of stuff, that quantum entanglement theory, these things, again, all this quantum physics is another way in which bolsters the New Age, this whole worldview as, it's legitimate. It's definitely legitimate. Look at all the science coming out. Look at the latest physics coming out. You see, it's totally supporting my spiritual worldview. So, anyways, I digress. So let's read this. Let's read this quote and continue on. So Spangler makes clear that whatever he says about God, the Buddha, or Christ is based on direct personal experience of, quote, presences. And that personal experience, direct personal experience, psychedelics, right? It's all about direct personal experience. That's how you know something to be true, is if you experience same thing in the New Age. It's not about laws of logic. It's not about objective measurements of something to be true. It's not questioning one's epistemology. If I experienced it, it's real. That's the whole basis. If I experienced it, it's real. So again, we see this here. So let's read this quote. Spangler makes clear that whatever he says about God, the Buddha, or the Christ is based on direct personal experiences of, quote, presences. One is a presence that pervades everything else. It is beyond description. But I think of it as the absolute foundation for everything that exists. Sometimes I call this God. This presence is universal, transcendent, and beyond human imagining. And at the same time, it is profoundly personal, immediate, and accessible. There is an extension or aspect of this Godhead that reaches deep into the incarnational patterns of creation and links the immanent with the transcendent, the particular with the universal. One might call it active or dynamic sacredness. I think of it generically as the avatar function. Sometimes I experience it as two separate presences. The first is a presence that, when I encounter it, is like entering a deep, deep well of peace, compassion, and serenity. It has a quality of depth to it that beggars description. This presence I have always identified as the Buddha. The second is a presence of love and compassion, as well as a presence of peace, but it possesses a powerfully stimulating energy. When I encounter it, simply, I am that which you have named the Christ, unquote. Ridiculous. So it continues. Elsewhere, Spangler describes the Christ as a, quote, participative dimension, unquote. You see how abstract they get with their definitions of Christ. That's what I was trying to highlight from the beginning. It's like they do everything they can conceptually to prevent people from encountering the biblical historical Jesus. They have him defined as every other thing you can imagine. He's the quantum field. He's the source of consciousness. He's the participative dimension. He's the I am that which you have named the Christ. It's wild. So anyways, elsewhere, Spangler describes the Christ as a participative dimension. Quote, I experience this dimension in various ways. At times it seems like an event horizon. On the one side of it lies singularity and the merging into oneness of all the geometries and dimensions that we know of, while on the other side of it lies the multiverse and all its diversity and unfolding splendor. Yet at the same time, that is a boundary. It is also a path winding through the whole multiverse, connecting each part to the singularity, to the ultimate source. Again, all abstract, generic frames. Because this dimension is available to us, human beings have always been able to experience it. Throughout history, it has been called different things, but the name most familiar to us in our culture is the Christ. We think of the Christ as a person, and often as an energy or a state of consciousness. Moving into the inner realms, though, it can be experienced as a dimension that runs through all the enfolded and unfolded universes and dimensions, right back to the source. The Christ is a way of extending ourselves and manifesting ourselves in the universe in a manner that generates qualities of empowerment, participation, communion, co-creativity, compassion, and love, to name a few. However, it may be helpful as well to see the Christ as a kind of meta-geometry or meta-typology that is accessible to every point of incarnation within creation. So, what I want to then highlight is, again, you guys have probably heard me talk in multiple streams. You've heard me ramble on about logos theology, the one and the many, metaphysical frameworks, sacred geometry, fractal mathematics. Again, all the logos. Don't you guys see, again, like when they're talking about the participative dimension, the Christ, in both of these paragraphs, they're talking about the logos, but they aren't referring to the logos, right? They're talking about what the logos actually does is what they think this weird, abstract, generic framework of a worldview they have, they think that's what it does, right? So, continuing on, this is certainly a far cry from any traditional notion of Christ. Yes, thank you, Walter. Agreed. Whether of Orthodox Christian or theosophical provenance, it should be noted that certainly not all believers in the cosmic Christ have followed Spangler's evolution from theosophy to anthroposophy to holography, or the holographic universe. The Ramallah books, for example, or I'm not familiar with George Trevelyan, apparently feel no need for an updated reformation of theosophical concepts. Another example of New Age Christology finally attempts to reinterpret traditional Christian mysticism in holistic terms. The Roman Catholic Matthew Fox borrows a term from Gregory Bateson, who would undoubtedly be horrified by this use, in order to describe the cosmic Christ as, quote, now this is coming from a Roman Catholic, mind you, the pattern that connects all the atoms and galaxies of the universe, a pattern of divine, this is the Logos, of divine love and justice that all creatures and humans bear within them. The cosmic Christ will make things happen, will affect a change of heart, a change of culture, a change of ways. This book is about the sacred and our response to it. Reverence. The sacred what? The sacred everything. The sacred creation. Stars, galaxies, whales, soil, water, trees, humans, thoughts, bodies, images. The holy omnipresence of the divine one in all things. The Western term for this image of God, present in all things, is the cosmic Christ. Can you believe that? First of all, can you believe that that comes from a Roman Catholic? And why would anybody who knows philosophy, why would anybody need to come up with the cosmic Christ? You can just use Logos theology. The Logos is what connects all of creation. The Logos is what connects the stars and humanity and whales and soil and all. It's the Logos. In the relatively recent holistic formulations of the latter Spangler and of Matthew Fox, it seems that in the end, the non-personal pole, which more takes the upper hand. New Age believers do feel a need for a personal relation to the divine, but very frequently, their respect for scientific monism proves stronger, right? I mean, because really, the New Agers, they're part of scientism. It will be seen that in the absence of a fully personal God, less spiritual entities may take up this function. You know, one of the things I'd be very interested in is mass compliance and religious affiliation. I'd be very interested because of how he just said that many of the New Agers make rhetoric that they want a personal God or a personal relationship to the divine. Of course, then you ask them the divine, and it's this very abstract principle thing. You know, how can you have a personal relationship with that? Never mind you. But at the same time, they have stronger beliefs in science itself. And so that's why I'd be very curious, how many New Agers, you know, who want to talk about spiritual, I bet most of them wear masks. I bet most New Agers are terrified of the Kufid, right? So yeah. John Pro said Catholic absolute divine simplicity leads to this stuff. You're absolutely right, John. John Pro is absolutely right, guys. Go check out John Pro art if you can. Get yourself an icon. No, you're absolutely right, bro. Because the absolute divine simplicity puts them back into the framework of monism, whether it's Neoplatonism, whether it's Gnosticism, whether it's it could be Leibniz. You know, it doesn't matter. The monism, the monistic emphasis, the worship of oneness, it always leads to this stuff because the worship of oneness essentially leads to ecumenicism, right? I'll be doing a one-on-one with shout out to George. We'll be talking about the royal path and orthodoxy, but it's about ecumenicism and the heresy of ecumenicism. And we have a reading that we were going over Father Seraphim Rose on the royal path, talking about ecumenicism. And again, that the evil one, his goal is for the one world religion, right? That all the religions are going to focus on oneness, right? God is one. So now we all have these same generic abstract concepts of God. So if we all have the same generic abstract concepts of God, well, that means we all worship the same God. Ecumenicism, one world religion, it totally blends together. It's the same presupposition. So John Pro is absolutely right. In my opinion, it's the absolute divine simplicity of Aquinas that is going to take the Catholic. I mean, it already is. It already is. If you don't see ADS, absolute divine simplicity, as being entirely consistent with the conceptual schematics and framework of all these other world religions who focus on oneness, I don't know what you're doing. It's clear as day. It's clear as day. I'm sure all you guys see it as well. So I have a few more things I want to read, but let me just now jump into some of my notes real quick. So now we basically covered what is the cosmic Christ, right? And we saw reference to multiple authors, to really the whole movement. Yeah, their God is Lucifer, of course. I mean, ultimately, the evil one's behind all these different interpretations. But I want to talk about the ontological starting point. I've hit on much of this stuff, but I want to go over it now as its own section. Is the presuppositions of the New Age and the whole cosmic Christ worldview is the ontological starting point. That what is our ontological starting point as Christians? Our ontological starting point, again, if you're not familiar, ontology is just a fancy word for being, right? For the fundamental basis of existence. Ontology, the ontological reality of myself, is human nature. As a Christian, we'd say the ontological reality is that human nature has fallen away from its ideal purpose. This is the great fall. Therefore, human nature, my ontological reality is that I'm sinful. I am fallen. I have to try to get back to where our nature was pre-fall. We do this through Jesus Christ because he's already become human. He is God. He's made a way for that to happen. So our ontological beginning point is that God and myself are two entirely different things. We do not share the same essence. We do not share the same nature. The ontological starting point for the New Age, for the cosmic Christ guys, is that the cosmic Christ principle, as I've already said, undergirds all of reality. Therefore, every person is fundamentally God and needs to connect with that divine principle. So the ontological starting point is not that you are separate from God. It's the exact opposite. It's that deep down you are God, and then deep down in the fundamental recesses of reality itself, that is also God, and you need to connect the God that's deep down within you with the God that's primordial in the universe, and that is the cosmic Christ. That is Christ consciousness. That is a fundamentally different ontological starting point than what we would support. So to connect with the divine principle, the egoic self versus the cosmic self. This is another, again, this is how they're really framing the dissolution of the person, is that the individual self, the ego self, the historical self, this is a problem. This has to be done away with. We can't have this anymore. So from the New Age point of view, the self that Christ in Orthodoxy wants you to work on, wants you to perfect, wants you to repent from the things that this self is doing, the New Age wants you to totally disassociate yourself with that, right? The self that Christ wants to save, the New Age wants you to disassociate with, totally break away from the ego self to attain the cosmic self, the cosmic self, the cosmic self, the self of the underlying fundamental reality. And again, you can see the dissolution of the egoic self for the cosmic self is the same thing as the NPC. It's Satan, the trickster, is getting all these people to destroy the image of God in themselves so that they become synonymous with each other. They become one thing. They lose all uniqueness in the name of uniqueness, right? Just like there is no inclusivity in the name of inclusiveness within these circles. Everything is a rhetorical trick. It's a flip. It's magic. They use semiotics of magic. It's not what it appears to be. And so the ego self, you got to destroy that for the cosmic, the true self. This is the same pattern of Satan tricking people to destroy God, the image of God in themselves. And so it's an illusion that you're separate from other people. So that's another part of this is once you realize that you have to destroy that ego self, that ego of who you are needs to be done away with, and that you need to attain this cosmic self, then the realization is not love your neighbor because both of you are persons. It's that you're all one. You're all the same thing. It's all one consciousness. It's all one being. There's only one we're in a room and there's 10 of us and we're talking. Guess what, guys? There's only one being here. It's the true self. It's the cosmic self. The egos, that's all an illusion. That's not who you really are. And so the illusion of separateness, again, it's always getting these abstract oneness, right? It's always getting people to give God in themselves away. They're just giving it away. And so the illusion that you're separate from other people has to be overcome. And so once you realize that you are everybody else, who are you, right? What's unique about you? And so experience then is the purpose for diversity, and that's a big one. So experience plays two big factors. Experience is how you're going to justify your own reality and your own worldview and what you believe in. But experience is also what the cosmic Christ is trying to do. Because based on its own presuppositions, God isn't omnipotent. He's not omnipresent, and he's not omniscient. Maybe he's omnipresent because he's the whole universe. But if God is the cosmic Christ, and the cosmic Christ has to experience reality through every individual so that it can learn and experience itself through different ways, that would insinuate God is learning. That would insinuate God is not omniscient. So the New Age God isn't omniscient. It can't be because, again, God himself is privileging experience. So you have to experience. God wants to experience the world. And so by experiencing the world, God learns, God grows. God is Jenny over here, and he's Jack over here, and he's Bobby over here. And actually, he's Melissa, who's transitioning into Mark over here. And it's all God. So that's a big one on the personhood. So the egoic self versus the cosmic self. The personal ego is an illusion. Your actual God-given identity is an illusion. And it's also an illusion that you're separate from everybody else. And therefore, experience is the purpose for diversity. And here's another one that I was thinking about. If you are everybody that I never thought about before when I was into these worldviews, but now I'm thinking about as an Orthodox Christian, is if it's an illusion that you're separate from other people, that would also insinuate that, think about morality, helping your neighbor, helping the poor. Why would you necessarily need to do that? That is also you, and you're also right here. And so, well, what should I do? If I'm me and I'm also the homeless person, can I just gratify my own wishes and my own hedonistic desires versus helping somebody else? Since ultimately it's the same thing, right? We're the same person. And I'm sure that myself over here who's homeless would want myself over here to do something that I really enjoyed. So you see the selfishness in the name of unselfish love. You see the ego in the name of destroying the ego. It's crazy. And so, beginning, the New Ager wants to discover who they are as a person. I highlighted this earlier. However, the New Age theology devoids them of personhood. So in the search, so again, so many people in the New Age, same with myself, it's like you're young, you have a bunch of energy, maybe you're a reader, you're getting into esoteric knowledge, different forms of spirituality. You want to know what's going on. You want to know what's real. You don't want to be limited. Maybe you grew up in a Christian context and you saw how fallacious it was. You saw the hypocrisy of Christians around you. You realize, I don't want to be like my parents, or I don't want to be ignorant of what I believe in. I'm going to learn. And so you go down this spiritual path, and maybe one day you start getting into the New Age. And what's the point? Well, the point is to figure out who you are, right? You want to know, you want to figure out who am I? What is my personal identity? And so you get into the New Age, and what does the Alan Wattses and the Deepak Chopras of the world, the Eckhart Tolles, where do they take you? They take you to a place that totally pulls the rug out from underneath you. You're searching for the person of who you are, and the realization is there is no person. There's just a cosmic principle. And that's who then you need to identify with. And by identifying like that, you see how it's a form of brainwashing. That now, if you get 100 people to identify as the cosmic principle, that's like a brainwash. None of those people are going to really be unique. None of those people are actually going to be autonomous. They're all going to be perceiving themselves as enlightened, that they're gods, that they're part of the cosmic. It's the same thing as the NPC. It's a different code. It's a different software, but the formation of it is like the same thing. So all personal identity must be done away with, because personal identity is tied to the ego, and that's toxic, especially if you're a man. And so the next part I had was the holographic universe and stuff that I wanted to highlight quickly, which I already did. And then Deepak Chopra, he has a whole book called The Third Jesus. It's called the third Jesus, the Christ we cannot ignore. And so what's his argument? Again, Deepak Chopra, it's a joke of being an actual intellectual thinker. Like Deepak Chopra, it's a joke. Don't take that guy serious. But his argument is that there's three Christs. There's three Christs. The first Christ is the historical man of Jesus of Nazareth. He was just a man. Then the second Christ is the theological conception that was developed by those early Jews. Again, it's just a myth. It's just a conception. It was just developed by those Jews. But the third Christ, the real Christ, that's the cosmic Eastern principle of divinity. You see, that's the cosmic Christ. That's about universality. That's about the lack of personhood. And what's funny about all these enlightened thinkers is, if you start looking into it, they have some degenerate practices. They tend to have sexual problems, meaning their sexual affairs, or all this type of stuff. That the whole game. It's like once you're orthodox and your theology begins with personhood, you can re-engage with all this stuff, and you see that that's the game. They're trying to prevent you from developing a personal relationship with the personal God. Therefore, everything, instead of moving person to person and moving this way between you and Christ, you and the Father, you and the Holy Spirit, you and the Holy Trinity, that it's doing the opposite. It's right. Go towards the cosmic consciousness, right? God doesn't have a true personhood. You don't have a true personhood. Go in the opposite way. Go towards abstractness. Go towards the annihilation of one's authentic self. That's where you'll find enlightenment. That's where you'll find happiness. And really what you're doing, again, is destroying the image of God in yourself. And so how does this all relate to entheogens? I wanted to say something briefly before I wrapped up here. Is that if cosmic Christ is the fundamental field in which everything comes out of, as I tried to highlight earlier, you can see the DMT, the spirit molecule worldview, how DMT is present in everything. It's present in the leaves, the trees, the grass, animals. It's in myself. It's in my brain. Dimethyltryptamine. It's right there. It's everywhere, right? This must be the God principle, or the spirit molecule, right? As they call it, as Rogan does in his documentary. And so if DMT is everywhere and dimethyltryptamine is the most intense psychedelic, and it takes you to these wonderful places and these little entities who know who you are, and you can have all this insight. Well, you can see how that comes together, right? Because in their worldview, it's like God, the cosmic consciousness, the cosmic Christ, he has DMT all over reality so that we can get back towards him. We can ingratiate ourselves back towards him. And what do the psychedelics do? The dissolution of the ego, the dissolution of boundaries. It takes you back to another place. It's a phenomenological way to destroy the image of God in yourself as well. You're destroying the personhood. You're in the name of destroying, again, although they're not, right? In the name of destroying the ego, they inflate their own ego, but they do it in the name of destroying the ego. They become all like each other, right? They lose their individuality. They lose their uniqueness. And so the DMT, the psychedelics, it fits so nicely because now you can say, well, Christ was an illuministic figure, or Christianity had a psychedelic Eucharist. Christ was a mushroom, to build on John Allegro. Christianity and its Eucharistic tradition is just, it's symbolic of the true mystery, which is a psychedelic, which is about illuminism, that you ingest something, and by ingesting something, you can attain more immortality, right? It's the elixir of life. That's all the magical worldview. And so for them, Christianity is just the symbol of all this. It's just a metaphor for all this, as opposed from the Christian point of view, all of what they're doing is taking you away from the one true mystery, which is the Eucharist, which is the elixir of life, which is, the drink of immortality. And so, again, the psychedelics destroy the personhood. It promotes illuminism. It redefines who Christ is, and it connects the whole Christ consciousness, cosmic Christ thing with the presence of dimethyltryptamine everywhere in the universe or in creation. So that's another one. So to conclude this, the last section, that in comparison to orthodoxy, what I see with the New Age and the cosmic Christ mythos, is that it obliterates personhood theology. It's fundamentally pantheistic. It's a way of escapism, So it's fundamentally pantheistic. It obliterates personhood. I don't need to go into that. It's a way of escapism. And so what do I mean by that? I just highlighted how the Buddha, right? The Buddha, his wife is pregnant, right? Siddhartha Gautama, the prince, right? He encounters death. He encounters sickness. He encounters old age, right? These things that his father was trying to prevent from him. So instead of bearing the facts of reality, death, suffering, old age, what's he do? He leaves his pregnant wife to go meditate under Bodhi trees. That is selfish. That is completely selfish. The Buddha is selfish. Siddhartha Gautama is selfish. And that is the archetype of the New Ager, right? It's escapism. It's moving away from responsibility. I don't want more responsibility. So the New Age theology, it provides a sort of a spiritual escapism, in my opinion. And for some people, I've heard Stephen Bankars talk about this. For a lot of New Agers, they grew up with trauma. They were traumatized. Maybe they experienced assault in one way or another. And so they're damaged and they're looking for wholeness. So that search to be whole as a person gets so many people into the New Age, which is ultimately going to destroy them as a person. It's going to get them, maybe potentially they become homosexual. They get wrapped up into a sexual fetish. They get up on drugs, or they get addicted to the ego, right? Because that's a big part of all this spiritual stuff. So I see the whole cosmic Christ and the New Age Christologies as another way of escapism. Not just from that, but in the other flip side is the moral teachings of Christ. That, again, as I said, the New Age and the cosmic Christ, they never directly encounter the biblical living Jesus Christ because of the moral message, the light it would shine on their own sins. That is too truthful. That is too revealing. That is what they don't want to get into contact with. So again, then the cosmic Christ, the whole mythos of the New Age and the Christ consciousness, it's another form of escapism, not escaping from their life per se, but escaping from the reality of their own sin, escaping from the fact that they have to change the way that they are living. So, that also leads to love. Love is a big part of the New Age. And love. What is love in the New Age? It's not about person-to-person love, right? In a Christian theological framework, love is tolerance. Just like social justice warriors, just like the Progressive Political Party, love, acceptance, all it is tolerance. Morality is just tolerance. And so tolerance in and of itself becomes a virtue because, again, Satan, the evil one, is all about the dissolution of boundaries and distinctions. So good and evil doesn't exist. Male and female doesn't exist. National borders doesn't exist. Or things like distinctions at all don't exist. Tolerance is a way in which to brainwash people to associate their own morality with tolerating all things. So you can get people to think that they're really moral because they will tolerate anything. That isn't morality. That isn't morality at all, and that's a trick of the evil one, again, to dissolve all distinctions. Okay, this person's gone. It's a selfish journey for actualization, inflates pride and ego. I mentioned that. The New Age doesn't engage with the moral message of Christ, and so that leads to my last one is what in the New Age, what in this whole framework of the Christ consciousness, the cosmic Christ, where is their humility? What is challenging about being a New Ager, right? I can tell you, try to become Orthodox. It's not easy, and you realize how quickly you fail and how much of a sinner you are. What in the New Age humbles people? What brings people low? Because everything is inflating their pride. They're God. They're God. You're connecting with the divine print. You're becoming more of God. You're more of God than I am God. It's just continual inflation. And what it does is it uses the names of love and selflessness. But they just say the words and do the exact opposite. They just say the words and do the exact opposite. So that, anyways, guys, kind of sums up today's. I have more that I wanted to read, but it's already 6 o'clock, and I got pre-sanctified liturgy starts at 6:30 at my church. So let me see if anybody threw in any super chats. So if you guys got any super chats or you'd like to say anything, feel free to throw something in real quick. Looks like nobody has super chatted anything. So, if you guys have anything you'd like to say quickly before I hop off here, like I had a few things that I wanted to share with you. Well, let me just read them real quick. I'm gonna fly through these guys. And again, if you'd like to show some support, please throw in a super chat. Use the Streamlabs link if you could. The Streamlabs link is in the description of the video. Please use that link. Shoot in a super chat or use YouTube if you prefer. So this is on the Essenes and Jesus. Actually, I may just make this part of members only content. So the other half, because I really need to go. It's already 6:04 and I got church. So I am going to read the rest of this for the Essenes and Jesus and the Age of Pisces. I'm going to put this up on the website for members only. So guys, please become members over at the website if you could. And I will have that again. The other half of my video on Logos and the Greek tradition, that is up on it, where I just talk about the Stoics. We do a whole over an hour talking about the Stoics. Again, I post about a video every week over at the website. It'd be a great way to support if you could. So I'd greatly appreciate that. Guys, please smash that like if you can. Also share this stream. I've been having some really weird stuff going on with my stream. I'm not going to say it out loud. Don't want to evoke any of the tech demons or anything like that. So I will keep my mouth shut. But some stuff has really been going weird on the website. So please like and help me out. Please like and subscribe. Share the streams if you can, guys. It just seems like the channel was going like this, and then all of a sudden it starts going. Doesn't make any sense. I'm putting out more content than ever before. I don't get it. But anyways, looks like somebody threw in something over on Streamlabs. Oh, John Pro threw in $5 and said, "Great stream, brother." Thank you very, very much, John Pro. Thank you. Thank you very much, brother. I greatly appreciate that. Theoria Zone Streamlabs link is in the video description. It's in the video description. Here, I can throw it. I'll throw it to you real quick. So there it is. But thank you, John. Thank you very much, brother, for the $5. I greatly appreciate that. Guys, please go over. Check out John Pro on Instagram. John Pro Art. At John Pro Art. Get your guys self an icon print. If you didn't see my conversation with John Pro, super based, great Orthodox brother. He makes beautiful icons. Go get you an icon from him. Support our community. So just wanted to say that. Again, I really do need to hop off here. So I'm going to jump off. Oh, Truth Eli threw in $5 and said, "Just tuning in. Stay blessed." Thank you so much, Truth Eli. Again, thank you, John Pro. Greatly appreciate your guys' support. John Pro said it's happening to every creator. Yeah, thanks, brother. I was worried because it's like, just like 2 weeks ago, it was like the channel was getting ready to take off. I was like so excited. I thought, wow, and literally it's like the subscribers, the likes, the view, everything. It's not where the analytics were. So frustrating to say the least, especially when you put so much time and effort into creating streams, creating content, trying to make it the best you can. And then it's like things you can't control, but it is what it is. But, anyways, guys, I'm going to hop off here. Thank you so much, John Pro. Thank you, Truth Eli. And Daniel E. threw in $10. Thank you so much, brother. I really, really do appreciate that. Thank you, Daniel E. Thank you, Truth Eli. Thank you, John Pro. I am going to now get off here. Please smash that like, guys. If you like the stream, please share it with somebody. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And I will see you all next time, which will probably be Friday or Thursday. So Friday or Saturday. Friday or Saturday, I will be back again with a new stream. So I will see you guys then. Take care. Have a wonderful evening. And God... Oh, looks like we got one more super chat just came in, so I want to give them a thanks before I get out of here. Theoria Zone through intent. Brother. Aloha. Our Orthodox brother over on the island, or islands, I'm not sure which island you're on, over in Hawaii, threw in $10. Thank you very much, Theoria Zone. Thank you, Daniel E. Thank you, Truth Eli. And thank you, John Pro. I will talk to you all later. Again, I will see you most likely Friday or Saturday. So until then, as always, God bless.